signature Terminator style. It has a keyboard that stretches from edge to edge with no gaps between the keys. The haptic trackpad is hidden underneath the wrist rest, and there's a capacitive function row that just keeps things looking really clean and nice without the confusion of Apple's Touch Bar. It's an admirable achievement, I'll give Dell that, but it also feels like their designers just really emphasize style over usability. Take that haptic trackpad for one. When I first got my hands on it in December, I was floored by just how unique that design was, but I was also kind of instantly worried about what it meant for usability. It's certainly a cool design. When the computer is on, the motors kick in underneath the trackpad and allow you to swipe and click as you're used to, but you can't actually see where that trackpad area is. Now, of course, haptic trackpads aren't anything new. Apple's been using them for years on the MacBook Pros, and they were just starting to show up in Windows laptops, and you saw these are dust and grime, can't get underneath. On the XPS 13 Plus, that technology is just a little more uncanny because you don't know where the trackpad is. You assume it's in the middle, but if you're typing away and looking up at the screen, you can easily miss the trackpad area, so you can't tell you're hitting it until you see the cursor moving or click down, you feel it. That's not so something. The invisible trackpad basically feels like a party trick, It's something that can impress your friends and family. It certainly wows people in cases where I miss swipe, where I need to swipe, or I do a right click when I do a left click. It is something you'll probably get used to. The XPS 13 Plus's keyboard is far more successful. It spans the entire length of the computer, and as I mentioned, it has practically no gaps between the keys. We saw something similar with HP Spectre X360 in 2019, but you know what? Dell goes even further. These keys are going all the way to the end of the computer. The result is something that just feels really luxurious to type on. I can spread out my fingers, kind of like I do on a desktop keyboard. It just feels super. Trackpad makes me wonder if Dell could ever use that technology to add haptic motors underneath the keyboard to give you a deeper sensation of clicking. I also think that technology can help the capacitive function row feel a bit more like traditional keys. I do like that the function keys stay in place. It's not like the touch bar, like I mentioned, because the touch bar would keep changing things up with different shortcuts, and it would just get really, really confusing. I also wish the function row was more visible outdoors, especially in direct sunlight. It can get a little washed out. I had a hard time seeing those outside. As premium and sturdy as it ever did, looking a bit closer at the case, you'll probably notice some omissions there. There are two Thunderbolt 4 USB-C ports on either side of the computer, but there's no headphone jack in the box, so those are nice to have. Unfortunately, because it only has two USB-C ports, you can't use both of those adapters while you're actually charged the 3.5mm jack into the MacBook Air, which weighs the same 2.7 pounds as the LCD-equipped XPS 13 Plus. I don't think Dell has any. 13 Plus is your only option. The standard XPS 13 only has 1080p LCD options. Our review unit would be even nicer when I'm using this thing in direct sunlight. This being an XPS 13, the Plus also has Dell's razor-thin Infinity Edge bezels. Now, the effect is still really cool. It looks nice to have a display that's practically just floating in the XPS 13 Plus. It's something you can't even see. Under the hood, it's powered by 28-watt 12th gen Intel chips, whereas last year's XPS 13 had 15-watt 11th gen CPUs, and that is a big difference. More energy, more power means better performance. Basically, that means this is the small XPS you'd want to get if you want to do some serious work. Our review unit was equipped with Intel's 12-core i7 1280p, the fastest chip available for the XPS 13 Plus. It's a hybrid 14-core CPU made up of 6 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores. That sounds impressive on paper, and it really proved itself worthy in our benchmarks. In Geekbench 5, the XPS 13 Plus outpaced gaming laptops like the Razer Blade 15 and the Asus Zephyrus Duo, and it even came close to the much larger XPS 15. Not surprisingly, it also outclassed Lenovo's new Yoga 9i, another ultra-portable running Intel's Iris Xe graphics and similar chips in Cinebench R23. That GPU doesn't really do much help when it comes to gaming though. In Halo Infinite, I could barely get things playable in 1080p with low settings, so I would not recommend it for that. Maybe with a lower impact game like Minecraft or Overwatch, it should just be fine. We tested the XPS 13 Plus in its Ultra Performance Power Mode, which spins up the fans and lets it run a little hotter, but for typical use, I do wish the battery life was more impressive. The XPS 13 Plus lasted 12.5 hours in our testing in optimized mode, and 9 we tested went close to 16 hours on battery life in our benchmark. For years, we've recommended the XPS 13 for anybody who just needs to get basic work done, and if you need more power for video editing or something, there's the XPS 15 and XPS 17. This year, Dell finally has an XPS 13 that can fit that build in a couple other stores. Try and test it, try and get your hands on the trackpad and the keyboard and see if it's to your liking, because I do think some people are really going to be annoyed by that trackpad. It's definitely something that's going to keep me from using this long term. The XPS 13 Plus starts at $1,200 with a 512GB SSD, 8GB of RAM, and a 1920 by 1200 Full HD Plus LCD monitor. As usual, I'd suggest bumping up to 16GB of RAM and a 1TB SSD for $14.99 if you're planning to keep using this for more than 4 years. And if you want OLED with these specs, you have to spend at least $17.99.